I'd like to call the meeting of the Planning Commission for May 27th to order. If everybody would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight's agenda will consist of the consent agenda, a public hearing for a conditional use permit for Toyo Motors, a public hearing for rezoning for Northridge Cottages, as well as a public hearing for the residential planned district overlay for Northridge Cottages, and then a master alternative sign plan. With that, I would ask for if there's any additions, corrections to the minutes. Seeing yes, sir.
Move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Billups. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Mr. Haney. All those in favor?
Wallace.
Mr. Wallace, I'm sorry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item on the agenda will be the public hearing, and I'll briefly run through the procedure for a public hearing. I will open the hearing, ask for exhibits from council. Staff will make comments. The applicant will make a presentation. Then we'll ask for witnesses in favor, witnesses opposed. Then we'll have general discussion, and then I'll close the public hearing and we'll have discussion among the council for a vote. So with that, I would open the public hearing for conditional use permit for CUP-1-15-4734 Toyo Motors and ask for the exhibits.
Mr. Chairman, the city has 8 exhibits. Number 1 is the staff report with attachments. Number 2 is the affidavit of publication in the Blue Springs Examiner. Number 3 is the application with attachments. Number 4 is the 185-foot notification map. Number 5 is a list of names and addresses of property owners within 185 feet of the site. Number 6 is a copy of the letter sent to said property owners. Number 7 is Title 4 Land Use Section, Blue Springs Code of Ordinances. Number 8 is the 2003 Comprehensive Plan. Those are all of the exhibits the city would offer into the record at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Hawley, would you like to give the staff presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you noted, this is a request for a conditional use permit to allow vehicle sales on this particular piece of property. Property is addressed at 1708 Southwest US 40 Highway. It's on the south side of 40 Highway between 15th Street and 19th Street. It's about a 0.45 acre parcel, and it is currently zoned RC, which is regional commercial. By way of a little background, there was a variance approved by the Board of Adjustment on July in 2014 to allow the minimum lot size in the RC Regional Commercial Zoning District to be reduced. That allowed this property to become zoned RC. The Planning Commission approved a preliminary plat for the property in October of 2014, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of a zoning map amendment, and the City Council then approved the zoning map amendment. That too took place in October of 2014. There was a second variance that was applied for, and that particular variance was approved in May of this year, of 2015, just this month. And that allowed for there to be some leniency in the paving coverage as well as landscape requirements. And we'll go over some of that as we go through the staff report. The applicant has also submitted a final plat, and that application is pending. It is currently tentatively scheduled for June the 8th of 2015 for the Planning Commission, and then we'll proceed to the City Council on June the 15th of this year. So with the conditional use permit, excuse me, on pages 4 and pages 5, it provides some of the standards that are necessary for a conditional use permit for vehicle sales. You will note that, excuse me, that vehicle equipment storage areas and parking areas have to be surfaced with 5 inches of concrete or 6 inches of asphalt. This particular lot was previously used for Sonics, as most of you are aware. It does have paving. There may need to be some repairs Those repairs are required as part of the municipal code, section 407010. So those will be taken care of with typical maintenance. The paving area setback that's required. The current proposal, the proposal as it was originally submitted, I should say, showed two parking spaces that would encroach into the 25-foot street right-of-way setback. They were issued a variance. That was the variance. That was part of the variance that was just recently issued in this month of this year. Parking seems a little confusing because you get different information as you go through the staff report, but to make it clear as to what it is, they currently are proposing 22 parking spaces. They're required to have 10 parking spaces that are for vehicle display, and then they are required to have 4 parking spaces total for the office use that goes along with the vehicle sales. So a total of 14 spaces are required, and they are providing 22. Again, as part of the conditional use permit, one of the requirements is that they provide a maximum of 20 feet, 20-foot driveway. In this particular piece of ground, and I will go to the site plan real quick here. As you can see on the overhead, they currently have 2 driveways along Highway 40. Traffic kind of circulates this way through the property with access then to the eastbound lanes of Highway 40. In this particular case, they have 2 20-foot driveways. They would be required by code to only have one 20-foot driveway or 2 10-foot driveways. However, that too was leniency was provided through the variance that was issued in June of this year, so that allows them then to keep the 2 20-foot driveways. There is a screening requirement, and the applicant is proposing that the overhead door, the southern end of the east elevation, and it will not be facing public right-of-way, nor will it be facing residential property. There is some existing landscaping that is along the eastbound US 40 highway and also along the southern property boundary. They will, and as a condition of the approval, be required to submit a sealed landscape plan because it is a commercial development. However, the landscaping that typically would be required along both the east and west property boundaries was also provided leniency through the variance, again, issued this month. The landscaping, I thought I'd talk a little bit about the landscaping. The applicant did provide this plan that does show some existing landscaping and some that I assume is proposed. However, again, because it's not a sealed landscape plan, we will need to see that during the process of occupancy in their case. If they need building permits, they could submit it with the building permits. Either way, we need to see a sealed landscape plan that shows us exactly what they are proposing. But you can see in the chart roughly what they'll need. They'll need 128 plant units, and that's spread between their open space landscaping and their parking lot landscaping. Buffer landscaping. Only the north transitional buffer looks like it's going to need some landscaping added to it. Currently, they are proposing to put a fence up. It's partially installed. That fence is also something that the neighbor to their south, the south property boundary, that fence is something that the neighbor to the south has requested and they are willing to do. The north boundary then again would be up along Highway 40, and that particular buffer area, they will need to add some landscaping. I'm not sure exactly how they intend to do that just yet, but they will need to add some landscaping up in that area. Staff does recommend approval of the conditional use permit. And I want to emphasize that the conditional use permit, although the applicant is Toyo Motors, the conditional use permit is to allow vehicle sales on the property. such that if some point in the future the current, the person who's currently looking at the property were to want to turn that over and sell it to another person who wanted to do vehicle sales, the conditional use permit would run with the land for vehicle sales. There are 8 conditions that staff is proposing, and with that, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hawley? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward and give their presentation?
I do. Good evening, I'm Greg Grounds, and I represent the applicant. Some of you may recall I was back on the original application for the change of rezoning, and at that time we made clear that our purpose was to get back here for this, because we could only get the request for vehicle sales if we had a conditional use. And that's what brings us here tonight. I want to just make a couple of comments. Jim, as always, has done a good job of describing the history and how we got to this point. My clients are willing to meet each of the staff recommendations. We have no problem with any of those. I did want to provide one little clarification. There was mention of a garage door, and as we'd said before, there are not going to be any vehicle repairs on site. The only purpose would be to pull a car in and do detailing and cleaning if necessary. So I wanted to remove any fears anybody might have about that. Other than that, we're looking forward to moving forward if all of our applications meet approval, and I'd be glad to address any questions anybody has.
Any questions for Mr. Grounds?
Thank you,
All
sir.
right, thank you. Any witnesses that would like to speak in favor of the petition? Any witnesses to speak against? Okay. Any other questions from the commission for any of the staff or applicant? All right. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And I will entertain a motion, more discussion. Mr. Wallace.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Approval of the conditional use permit, CUP-1-15-4734 with the staff recommendation.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Haney is the second. And I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Planning Commissioner Abbott. Aye. Commissioner Wallace.
Aye.
Commissioner Sanders.
Aye.
Commissioner Haney.
Aye.
Commissioner Banks.
Aye.
Commissioner Billups.
Aye.
Vice Chair Graham.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Next item on the agenda is items 3 and 4, public hearing for a rezoning for RZ-5-15-4823 Northridge Cottages. And
Why don't you let me go ahead and read the exhibits for the two of them, since I won't be here next time, and then there won't be any confusion. We can just tell them they've already been read.
okay. And for public hearing for the Planned Residential Overlay District Concept Plan, PROC 5-15-4824 Northridge Cottages. I will open the public hearing and ask for exhibits from Mr. McDonald.
Mr. Chairman, for the rezoning RZ-5-15-4823, the city has 7 exhibits. Number 1 is the staff report with attachments. Number 2 is the affidavit of publication in the Blue Springs Examiner. Number 3 is the application with attachments. Number 4 is the 185-foot notification map. Number 5 is a list of the names and addresses of property owners within 185 feet of the site. Number 6 is a copy of the letter sent to those property owners. Number 7 is Title 4 Land Use Section, Blue Springs Code of Ordinances. Then for the Planned Residential Overlay District Concept Plan, the city has 8 exhibits. The staff report with attachment is number 1. Number 2 is the affidavit of publication in the Blue Springs Examiner. Number 3 is the application with attachments. Number 4 is the 185-foot notification map. Number 5 is a list of names and addresses of property owners within 185 feet of the site. Number 6 is a copy of the letter sent to those property owners. Number 7 is Title 4 Land Use Section, Blue Springs Code of Ordinances. Number 8 is a 2003 Comprehensive Plan. Those are all of the exhibits that the city would enter into the record for the rezoning and the planned residential overlay district public hearings.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. The applicant has requested a continuance to the Monday, June 22nd Planning Commission meeting, so I would entertain a motion to accept that. Yes, Mr. Phillips.
Mr. Chairman, I move to continue these two items to June 22nd.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Banks. Motion and a second. I need a roll call vote.
Planning Commissioner Wallace,
Aye.
Commissioner Sanders,
Aye.
Commissioner Haney,
Aye.
Commissioner Banks,
Aye.
Commissioner Billups,
Aye.
Commissioner Abbott,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Graham.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Items 3 and 4 will be continued until the January 22nd, June 22nd, I'm sorry. Thank you. Brings us to our next item on the agenda is the Master Alternative Sign Plan, ASP-5-15-4826 for the Dillingham Lewis House Museum.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have to recuse myself from this item because I'm on the board and I'll be making the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Allen, would you like to give the staff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Again, before you this evening is a request from the Blue Springs Historical Society for a new freestanding sign at their Dillingham Lewis House Museum at 101 Southwest 15th Street. It's corner of 15th and Main, which we're all very familiar with it. You can see the aerial photo there. Also identified, try to zoom in here a little bit. Hopefully you can see approximately where the proposed sign would be located, right along 15th Street. So again, would not be at the corner around Main Street, but would be on 15th Street. Again, the applicant has gone through several review boards up to this point. Went before the Historic Preservation Commission back in November. They recommended approval. And then just last month in April, the Downtown Review Board also recommended approval. The proposed sign does not meet the current standards for a monument sign due to the fact that it's proposed to have an open base as well as kind of a removable placard that would identify upcoming events, things of that sort. Again, the sign itself is intentionally designed that way to be more in character with the period of history that it's trying to represent, and then also allow it to be more of a kind of a draw for the museum in terms of identifying upcoming events and activities. So keep this fairly brief. There's the map again. And there's a nice rendering from the applicant showing generally scale and location of where it's proposed. You can kind of see how, referring again to that placard kind of hanging down below, and I'll defer to the applicant to kind of explain the materials and the intention and such there. But staff is, we don't normally recommend approval for alternative sign permits, trying to adhere to the sign code, but in this case it is a unique situation in terms of being in the historic district, being a part of the historical society museum essentially, and it does seem to be fitting in character with its property and the surroundings, and again was also recommended, as I noted, by both the Historic Preservation Commission and the Downtown Review Board. So without further ado, I will turn it over to the applicant to discuss further. Unless there are any questions, I'm sorry.
Any questions for Mr. Allen? Doesn't look like it.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips?
Yeah, really, I don't have a whole lot to say. This picture really is the best indication of what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is we're just trying to match the historical character of the building and our purpose. So it matches the fences that are on the backside around the garden, in case if you're all familiar with that. It'll have the same caps on the posts and everything else. It'll be an all-wood sign with painted lettering. Be 5 foot high, 7 foot wide, and the piece down at the bottom will be just a single board that will hang from the lower end of the sign that will be changed out every time we have an event, such as the garden tour, the homes tour, or whatever's coming up. Just inviting everybody to come and participate, and letting everyone know that this is not a residence, but is actually the museum. We get a lot of confusion on that sometimes. So, here for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Phillips? Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion. Ms. Banks?
I gotta find it. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Dillingham Lewis House Museum sign, case file ASP-05-15-4826.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. Sanders. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Brings us to other business on the agenda, which our next meeting will be Monday, June 8th, 2015. Does anybody else have anything for the... Yes, Mr. Allen.
Okay, see if this is working. Wanted to, I guess it's my pleasure to introduce a gentleman who will be replacing Mr. Mark Trozen, who left in March. Mitchell Peel is in the audience. Mr. Peel is up for confirmation at the City Council next Monday, so we're referring to him as incoming Planning Commissioner. And you'll be joining us hopefully for the first meeting in June 8th. So your next meeting should have him available. So appreciate him being here tonight, able to take some time out and observe what's going on. And other than that, Mr. Peel lives in District 1, not far from former councilman, I believe he's former planning commissioner, Lyle Shaver. So just wanted to introduce Mr. Peel since he's able to be here tonight.
Welcome. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. It'll be a pleasure.
Anything else? I want to thank Bob McDonald for stepping in and filling in for Nancy tonight, who couldn't be here. Nice to see you again.
It's nice to be here, and thanks for making it so short.
You're welcome. Any other further business? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Phillips.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second, Ms. Banks.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.